Hey everybody, Brian here with TrailGrid Pro. Got an awesome new product announcement here. We've teamed up with AudX to bring you a completely plug-and-play solution for adding a 5-channel amplifier to your factory or aftermarket head unit. You guys have been following along with us for a while now. You know that we've had lots of great plug-and-play audio additions for your Toyota 4Runner. Previous versions of this kit have been available with a 4-channel amplifier and powered subwoofer, but now we wanted to go bigger. This kit will allow you to add an Alpine 5-channel amplifier, completely plug and play with all of the required harnessing that you need to connect this into your 2010 to 2024 Toyota 4Runner. The greatest part about this setup is it does work with your factory head unit, and down the road, if you want to swap out for an aftermarket head unit that has a little bit more functionality and technology, this kit will completely work for that setup as well. We've partnered up with AudX to bring this awesome plug-and-play harness for this solution. So here you can see that the harness is already completely made. It is pre-terminated with all of the ends that you need. This kit will also come with the connections that you need to connect to your Alpine S2 A55V 5-channel amplifier. When you go to the product page for this plug-and-play kit for your 4Runner, just answer a few simple questions that will give us the information that our production team needs to know to build out your kit specifically for your vehicle. I always say we're not building a solution for a 4Runner, we're building it for your 4Runner. So if you have a 2010 to 2019 or a 2020 to 2024 4Runner, our team will provide you with all of the harnesses that you need. So whether that be the harnesses for the back of the radio, you will get the Alpine specific ferruled ends that will allow you to connect the main harness to your Alpine S2 A55V amplifier. If you have an aftermarket setup, we'll provide you the RCAs to connect to your RCA pre-outs. We also have RCAs for the input side of the amplifier. One nice thing that AudX has included in this harness is actually a ground wire. So no worries about any sort of interference or noise. Both sides of this harness can be completely grounded to eliminate that. As a part of this kit, you will also receive all of the power and ground wire that you need. So here we have our power wire with an inline fuse. We also have the ground wire with the required 10mm bolt that we're going to use to ground the amplifier under the seat. This kit will also, with the subwire here, allow you to expand to an aftermarket subwoofer solution, whether that is the Alpine 10-inch or 12-inch down-fire box or any other subwoofer solution. The wires will already be included for that future expansion. In this collaboration between TrailGrid Pro and AudX, we've taken it even one step further, and we are now including an amplifier bracket. These will be pre-drilled for your specific amplifier, so the Alpine amplifier will fit directly on this. We've included some mounting hardware here labeled amplifier mounting screws that I'll show you how to mount the amplifier to the bracket. This will fit nicely and securely under your front passenger seat. If you want to expand this awesome system even a little bit further, we also will have a bass control knob available as an add-on. Again, this is completely plug and play, gives you bass adjustment right there at your fingertips. Before we go over the specifics of how to disassemble and install this kit, let's go over a few of the tools that you will need to complete the job. All right, we're going to need a ratchet, either powered or manual. I recommend having a couple of extensions of different lengths may be needed. You're also going to need a 10mm socket, a 14mm socket, and then a 9/32 socket that's going to be used for the amplifier mounting screws. We've got a couple of panel removal tools here, a Phillips and a flathead screwdriver, and then we also will need a 2mm Allen. The Allen wrench will be used when we go to make some of our connections to the amplifier itself. Now that we've gone over all of the great items that you will receive when you order this kit and the tools needed for the job, let's go ahead and jump into our 4Runner and get this installed. Let's begin disassembly of our 4Runner so we can get our awesome new 5-channel amplifier plug-and-play harness installed. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start here at the head unit in the center console. We're going to get all of this out of the way so that we have plenty of room to run our new harness. First thing that we're going to want to remove are the 2 side panels here. These you can usually just grab with your fingers. And we're just going to pull them off, and we'll set these out of the way. There we go. Next thing that we're going to do is remove the HVAC control. Grab here near the knobs and pull straight out towards you. On the back side here, we're going to release the retainer, and then we're going to disconnect the 1 plug. We'll set that to the side. Next thing that we're going to do is under the radio, there are 4 10mm bolts that need to be removed to release the entire head unit assembly. We're going to grab our ratchet. Again, I usually use an extension with a 10mm, and we're going to go ahead and take out the 4 10mm bolts. Normally, I would say put these in the cup holder for safekeeping, but here in a moment, we're actually going to pull the cup holder out. So I'm going to set these directly on the floor in front of me, out of the way, so that I know where they're at. All right, now we have those 4 10mm bolts out. We can go ahead and just gently pull on our factory head unit, and we're going to pull straight out towards us. Sometimes you do need to reach in behind and loosen up the wiring. And then at this point, we are going to disconnect all of the connectors on the back of the radio for right now, so we can get this out of the way. All right, there you go. You will notice on most of the 4Runner head units that you do have this one little jumper harness. This just connects the navigation module to the main head unit, so that one can stay in place. So we're going to set our factory head unit out of the way. If you have an aftermarket head unit installed, obviously the steps will be slightly different, but the main goal is to get the factory or your aftermarket head unit out so we give more accessibility to the center of the truck for running our harness. The next step that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to remove the cup holder assembly here. This truck has an aftermarket shift knob, but if you have the factory shift knob, we're going to want to spin that to the left to remove it. All right, at which point we're going to grab the cup holder assembly and we're going to pull straight up until it releases. On the bottom of our cup holder assembly, we're going to disconnect any of the wires that are holding it in. So here we have one here towards the front. We're going to push the tab in and release it. And then we have the other connector back here. Again, depress the tab and disconnect it, and then we can get our cup holder assembly out of the way. The next piece that we need to remove is this little plastic trim piece here at the bottom of the cubby. That simply lifts straight up and out of the way. We then need to grab our Phillips head screwdriver, and we're going to remove the 2 bolts here. Again, we're going to set these in a safe spot. That will free up our cubby. And you can pull that straight up and out of the way. We can then release any plugs that we have here on the back and remove your cubby. At this point, now we have our radio, we have all of the parts out of the center of our truck. This is going to give us plenty of room to run our main harness down from the radio along the transmission tunnel and under the seat to where our amplifier will eventually live. At this point, we're going to move down to the passenger seat and remove the seat. Next step of the process is removing the passenger seat. So we're going to need a panel removal tool and a 14mm socket. First thing that we're going to do is pop off the plastic covers here on the front of the seat mounts. So you can use a panel tool if you need to. I'm going to pop it up and pull it straight off. Sometimes you can just get under with your fingers and they will come off. And we're going to remove the two 14mm bolts. Set these to the side. Now that the bolts are out of the way, we're going to slide our seat forward. So this one's a power seat, or if you have a manual seat, just slide it forward. That will give us better access to the bolts in the rear. All right, there we go. Now we're going to jump behind the seat and take out the two rear mounting bolts. Now we're going to pop off the rear cover. Go ahead and remove our bolt. And repeat the same process for the last cover. And we'll leave the rear bolts here in the back seat. With the 4 seat bolts removed, we're going to go ahead and slide our seat back a little bit, and then we're going to tip it backwards because we need to disconnect the connectors from the bottom of the seat. All right, we have a couple of plugs here. We're going to pull back and release the pin. Depress the tab. Slide the connector off, and then same thing, depress the tab. And these are all held on with one retainer here. So we're going to grab our panel removal tool. There we go. So all we're looking to do is remove the wiring harness. Our seat is now freed up. We're going to go ahead and remove this from the vehicle and set it off to the side. Last bit of disassembly we need to do over here on the passenger floor is we're going to go ahead and remove the sill plate as well as the A-pillar kick panel. So we're going to start with the sill plate. Again, you can use a panel tool, or sometimes you can just get your fingers under the panel and just go ahead and pull straight up. And we're going to release all of the retainers. There we go. Check, make sure we still have all of our retainers. We'll set the sill plate out of the way. And to remove the kick panel here, there's a button fastener back there in the back. We're going to twist it to the left to release it. Go ahead and get that off. And then our panel will just pull straight off. There are little retainers. We're going to go ahead and make sure that we get that back out and put it back in the panel. So there it is. Slide that back in place for later. Removing these two panels is going to give us the access that we need later on when we start to run the power wire for our new 5-channel amplifier. Now that we've completed the disassembly of the interior of our 4Runner, the next step in the process is we're actually going to start installing our new plug-and-play kit with the harness and our power wire. So what we're gonna wanna do is find our T-harness end that's gonna go up towards the radio, and then the amplifier end, which has been nicely labeled for you, amplifier side. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna start with our T-harness that's gonna end up behind the radio, and we're going to work them up the middle of the dash. So what we have here are T-harnesses. I'm going to be showing you the install here in a 2020 4Runner with a factory head unit. So we have both sides of our T-harness. We have our black ground wire. We have our blue and white remote wire with our AM/FM antenna remote T-harness. And then the other wrapped cable here with the headphone looking jack on the end of it. That is for your bass knob. So what we want to do is we want to just kind of position these about where the head unit is going to go for now. We don't want to secure anything too tightly at this point. So I'm going to tuck these up here out of the way, and then we're going to grab the other end of our harness, and we're going to continue working it down the bottom of the dash and towards the transmission tunnel. Just take your time, kind of feed with one hand and pull with the other. All right, we're going to continue down along this passenger side of the transmission tunnel. And then we're going to go from the center console. We're going to go right here, kind of right before the cubby. You can go straight down, and we're going to go through and under the carpet, and then we're going to work our harness out towards where I'm currently sitting. There's going to be an opening in the carpet, so we want to get all of our amplifier ends out that hole in the carpet. All right, so on the passenger side, there's this flap here over the bottom seat bracket here, so we're going to pull this back. Sometimes it's held on a little bit. You can just kind of pull it up with your hand. So where we're going to go is we're going to go straight down here. You're going to feel to go under the carpet, and you can stick your other hand through. I'm just going to kind of feed with our right hand here. I've got the harness with my left. We'll get all of our connectors through, and then we can go ahead and pull the rest of our harness down and under the seat. I'm going to go ahead and just loosely place this on the floorboard, and then we'll address the connections later after we get our amplifier mounted to the bracket and start to get more things in place down here. But for the time being, we're just going to run our harness under the seat. Now we're going to start running our power wire for our new Alpine 5-channel amplifier. So in your kit, you're going to receive a couple pieces of power wire. You're going to have a short piece with a ring terminal here. This is going to connect eventually to the positive terminal on your battery. And then you're also going to receive an inline fuse. So the first thing we need to do before we can start running our wire is make our connections from our power wire to our inline fuse. So let's go ahead and get the twist ties off of our parts. All right, so it doesn't matter which end of the longer wire, they both have wire ferrules on them. We'll also need our inline fuse and our 3mm Allen. So we're gonna just squeeze and pop the cover off of the inline fuse. On both ends, there are set screws. We're gonna use our Allen wrench, and we're gonna go ahead and loosen the set screw We don't want to take it all the way out. We're just going to pull it back up till we can get our wire ferrules in. We take our short power wire, can insert the ferrule into one end, make sure it's all the way seated, and then we can start tightening down the set screw. We're going to get it finger tight, give it a little wiggle, and then we can tighten it a little bit more. I'm going to grab one of our wired ferruled ends of our long power wire. Again, insert into the other end of our inline fuse and tighten the set screw. Again, give it a little wiggle, and then we can tighten it all the way down. All right. At this point, we can get our cover, and we're going to replace our cover by just pushing and snapping it into place. Now we have a decision to make about which way we want to route and where we want to mount our inline fuse. So as we move around here, now we're going to start mocking up our location for our inline fuse. If you do not have a bunch of other accessories already, the top of the fuse panel box is usually a pretty good location. You may also want to mount it on the battery tie down. So we're just going to kind of find a good place that we want to mount this, how we want to manage our wires. So I think I'm going to go for something kind of like this. So I'm going to use the provided Velcro in the kit. Here, we're going to peel that off, and I'm going to stick our inline fuse right here to the top of our fuse panel. Obviously, if yours is dirty, you might want to clean that off first. All right, so now we have this mocked up. We do not want to connect the ring terminal just yet until we have the other end of the wire connected to our amplifier. Now we can work on running the power wire. I like to go as tight to the inside of the fender here. We're going to follow this main wiring harness that runs all the way across the firewall, and we're going to move towards the firewall grommet on the passenger side. So we're going to tuck it behind the relay fuse bracket. And we can grab one of our zip ties, and we're going to loosely hold our power wire in place. So we're just going to wrap one zip tie here around the wiring harness. And we're going to do this as needed across the main harness. All right, now that we have our power wire loosely ran across to the passenger firewall grommet, we're going to go ahead and make our X cut in the firewall grommet so that we can pass the wire from the engine bay into the cab. Now we can grab our knife that we're going to use to cut through the firewall grommet. I like to use one of these little extendable knives. So what we're going to do is we're going to go right here to the right of the main harness, and we're going to extend our knife and make a little X cut. So we're going to go ahead and cut down, and we're going to cut back the other way. What I like to do is then we're going to extend our knife, and we're going to plunge our cut deeper, because these grommets do have 2 layers. So we'll cut both ways. Once we feel it go all the way through the interior, we can set our knife to the side. And now we should be able to push our wire ferruled end of our power wire through. If you are meeting resistance when you're trying to push this through, you can either make your hole a little bit bigger in the grommet, or you can use some sort of lubrication, whether that be some glass cleaner or light oil, just to be able to help kind of pass it through. So we're going to go ahead and push the end through our grommet. Just feed it in. There. Push a little bit in, and now that should be enough where we see it drop out in the footwell under the dash inside the truck. So now we're going to go inside the truck. We're going to go ahead and pull all of our slack out. Before you do, just make sure that it is not caught up on anything in the engine bay. So let's jump inside and we'll pull the slack out and keep running it towards the seat. All right, so we can see our power wire popped out nicely here. We're just gonna pull out the slack. If you meet any sort of resistance, go back up under the hood and check to make sure it's not caught on anything. All right, so we have our power wire all the way through, and it's nice and tidy in the engine bay. Now we can actually just tuck it back behind, and we're going to go towards the door sill here. And we're going to continue running it under the first 3 of these plastic retainers. Just make sure, work it out, there's no loops or kinks in your power wire. All right, so after we go through the first 3 here, we got it all nicely tucked away. If you prefer to use zip ties at this point, you can absolutely do that as well. Next thing I'm going to do is grab some sort of screwdriver or your panel tool and just release the part that holds the carpet here, because we want to run our power wire from the 3rd retainer and we want to go straight towards under the seat. We can do that by pushing it through. We can roll back the flap here under the carpet. And here's our power wire. Once we have that through, lock our carpet back into place. And now we have our power wire run. We're going to continue to run it along this side. The power and ground are going to go towards the inside of the truck here. So if you want to keep everything nice and tidy, you can snake it under the air vent. And there we go. So our power wire is now run. Like I said, we're going to leave connecting the ring terminal to the battery for the absolute last step. We do not want to energize this system before we are ready. So we can continue running some more wires and making more connections here under the seat. Next piece we're going to run is our ground wire. So let's go ahead and get the twist ties off of our ground wire. In the kit, we will also have provided a 10mm bolt. That's going to be used on the ground wire here, right under the seat. So right below this main wire harness, you can see there is a pre-threaded hole in the front seat support. That is where we're going to mount our bolt. So we can go ahead and we're going to route our wire kind of in the same fashion as our power wire. And then we can use our 10mm bolt. We're going to go through the ring terminal. And then we're going to start threading this in by hand. And then we can tighten it up with our 10mm socket. All right, so nice connection there. Now we have power, we have ground. This is for our seat. We're going to tuck this out of the way for the time being. And we have our main harness. So now we need to grab our amplifier mounting bracket and our amplifier, as well as our amplifier mounting screws. All right, here we go. We have our AudX amplifier bracket. This is, again, going to be pre-drilled for your amplifier. So this one's already been drilled out for our Alpine S2 A55V 5-channel amplifier. The way that this is eventually going to go is the sticker is going to face up, and the 2 holes in the bracket will line up with the rear seat mounts Before we do that, we want to mount our amplifier to our bracket. In your kit will be a little baggie called amplifier mounting screws. This is going to contain 5 of each of the bolts, flat washers, split washers, and nut. To tighten these down, we're going to use a Phillips head screwdriver and a 9/32 socket. So what we want to do is on one side of our amp, you can see here we have the RCA inputs. We have all of our dial settings here. We're going to face that towards the outside of the vehicle, and our power and ground and our output side of our amplifier is going to face in towards the vehicle. So what we want to do, we're going to line up the amplifier on the bracket. Again, I have the RCAs facing me. You're going to grab 1 bolt, 1 split washer, 1 flat washer, and 1 nut. We're going to go up from the bottom through our bracket and through the mounting hole in our amplifier. Then you're going to put on the flat washer, the split washer, and the nut. And we're going to start these by hand. We're going to go around and get all 4 of them started. Then we can tighten them down. Now that we have all 4 of them started by hand, we can just go ahead and tighten them down. They just need to be finger tight. No real need to over torque and risk stripping out the bolt. All right, there we go. Now notice I did say originally we gave you 5 sets, so we only needed 4. So just in case you drop one of your mounting hardware across the garage floor, you do have an extra there for you. So we'll put the extras back in the bag and go put those in the I might need this one day drawer. So, all right, so now we have our amplifier firmly mounted to our bracket. It is time to start making connections to the amplifier itself. So starting here, you have all of your speaker level connections. These are going to be the output side of the amplifier. So this is going to be the connection that takes the signal and goes back up to behind the head unit to send the signal out to all of your speakers. So when we look here, you have channel 1, 2, 3, 4, and a sub. And then the top row here is going to be the positive wire. And then the bottom row is going to be the negative wire in the pair. So the top row is going to be the solid colored wire. The bottom row is going to be the corresponding color, but with a black stripe. So I'll show you that here in a second. We have our fuses, and then the next connection here is BATT for battery. So that is going to be our red power wire. In the middle here, we have our remote. That is going to be our blue wire with a white stripe. And then next we have GND. That's going to be our ground wire. So it's going to be our black ground wire. And then we flip the amplifier around. On the other side, we have our RCA connection. So this is going to be the input side, and I'm going to show you how to hook those up. But again, you have channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, channel 4, and then a sub left and sub right. So let's go ahead and we're going to place our amplifier on the floor, and then we can start making our connections from our harness to our amplifier. To make our connections to the amplifier, we need our 2mm Allen, especially on the output and the power and ground side. So the first thing you're going to want to do is use your 2mm Allen wrench, and you're going to loosen up all of the set screws so that we can start connecting our wires. The first harness that we're going to connect is our wire ferrule harness here for our speaker wires. On here, you'll see that they are nicely labeled. You have a white, gray, green, and purple pair of wires. Our standardized aftermarket wire colors are white, gray, green, and purple. So our white pair is going to be our front left. That's going to be our dash and our front door speaker. Our gray is going to be our front right. That's going to be the dash and door speaker on the other side. Our green is going to be our rear left. That's going to be your rear door and half of your rear hatch. And then purple is going to be the right rear. So that's going to be your right rear door and the other half of your rear hatch. So on our harness here, you can see on the whites, we have white, and then we have white with a black stripe. The black stripe is the ground or the negative. It also has a black wire ferrule on it. So on our Alpine amplifier, we're actually going to start with all of the negative wires because they go on the bottom here and we need access to the set screws. So we're going to grab our white with a black stripe. And we can insert the wire ferrule. And then we're going to tighten down the set screw. We're going to find our next pair, our gray, and we're going to get the gray with a black stripe. Again, it also has the black wire ferrule. And these just need to be finger tight. And then we're going to grab our green with a black stripe. And then last, our purple. And now we can go back and finish up the top row with our positive wires. These will have red wire ferrules on them. So we're just going to match up. So we're going to go back the other way. We're going to do solid purple. Our solid green, then gray. And then solid white. All right, now we have all of our speaker wires connected. The next thing we want to do is connect our subwoofer wire. So we have the red and the red with the black stripe. Again, the one with the black stripe is going to be our negative. So we're going to put that on the bottom row on our sub negative. And then our solid red wire goes on the top row. All right. Next, we can connect our red power wire. So we're going to put the wire ferrule in where it says BATT. Give it a little wiggle, and then we can tighten that down. We're then going to install our remote wire. So there's two options. Here I have the one if you've selected the base control knob. If you did not select the base control knob, the kit will come with this 4-pin connector that will just have a blue and white remote wire on it. In either case, the blue wire with a white stripe is going to go right here in the middle. If you get your amplifier all hooked up and you go to test it and your amplifier is not turning on, double check your connection here at the remote wire. That is the wire responsible for telling the amplifier that the head unit is on and that the amplifier also needs to be turned on. So that is usually one of the culprits of an amp not receiving power. Now we can install our ground wire. So push the wire ferrule all the way in and tighten it down. Give it a bit of a wiggle. All right, so that is the output and power side of our amplifier. Now what we'll want to do is grab our main harness, and our ferrules have an 8-pin connector. We'll match up to the 8-pin connector off of your main harness. Snap those together, and then your harness also has a 4-pin connector that will go to your remote wire. So we'll line up the tab, push those together, Now we can flip over to the RCA side of our kit. Now on the RCAs, you'll notice there is this ground wire. This is for if you want to ground the amplifier through the harness to the dash or the head unit. It's not 100% necessary, but it is recommended. So on the Alpine amplifier, we're going to remove one of the screws here on the control surface. Just going to use a small Phillips head screwdriver. Now we can put the screw that we took out through the tiny ring terminal, and then we're going to reinstall it. All right, now we can connect our RCAs. Again, you have white, gray, green, purple, and then in the sub we have orange and brown. So here on the amplifier, we're going to start with channel 1. So we're going to go white to white. And we're going to find our gray. That's going to go down below in channel 2. So we're going to go gray to red. And then we're going to find our rear left, our green. That's going to go up top row. So green to white. And then purple is going to go below it. So purple to red. And then our orange is our sub left. So we're going to go top row, and then the brown below it. Now we have our RCAs connected. If you opted for the base control knob on your remote wire harness, you'll have this little headphone looking jack. That's going to connect right here into the base control port on our amplifier. So with that in place, we can turn our amplifier around. We have one more connection to make. It's going to be our RCA harness. This 14-pin connector is going to line up with the main harness and snap together. So now we have our input, we have our output, we have our power, ground, remote, and our base control knob hooked up. Now we can start routing our wires. If you want to use zip ties to tuck these away and keep everything nice and tidy, you can absolutely do that as well. So we're just going to kind of keep mocking things up here. We're going to run our sub wire. So let's get it uncoiled. And we're going to follow the same path here. We're going to go out the reverse way of the way that the power wire came in. Again, you may need to release the carpet to make this a little bit easier. So we just reach through there, and we're going to pull our sub wire through. And then this is going to start, for right now, we're just going to start it through the same wire channel, but this time we're headed towards the cargo area in the back of the 4Runner. For right now, we can tuck it under the plastic. Sometimes it's easier to use your panel tool. All right, so we're going to get that ran. Got that kind of lined up. Got everything tidied up. We want to make sure we don't put too much tension on the wire ferrules themselves. Well, that looks pretty good right there. So we have our power wire hooked up, we have a remote, our ground, our input, and our output side of the amplifier. We're going to continue running our subwoofer wire. So now that we're here towards the B pillar, we're going to remove the door sill here by pulling straight up. And continue to tuck it under the plastic. Again, go through the little wire keepers here. And then once you get to the back here, you can continue tucking it under the plastic. This is usually easier done with your panel tool. Once you've gotten that started, you can replace your door sill. Now that we have our subwire run into the cargo area, we can connect either our 10 or 12-inch Down-Fire Alpine subwoofer. That is easily done. You see right here on one end of the subwoofer, you have a positive and negative port. So we can grab our subwire. We're going to twist up our bare wire ends here real nice. And just like on the amplifier side, there is a positive and a negative. So we'll split our wires. All we're going to do is depress the button, put our red into the positive, and the black into the negative. And that is it. We can position our subwoofer wherever we'd like it in the cargo area. There are some mounting feet that the subwoofer comes with if you decide you want to mount it down. Eventually we will be mounting ours down to our 5th gen 4Runner gear plate. I'm going to cover this in a separate video, but this is going to be an awesome upgrade for the back of your 4Runner. Before we start making any of the connections to the head unit, we're going to go ahead and show you one way to install the AudX bass control knob. We've come up with these 3D printed switch blanks that are going to allow you to mount this into the switch blank, and we're going to actually mount ours to the right of the steering column here. If you have extra ones over here to the left, you can also mount them there. It's really up to personal preference and how you want to run the bass control knob wire. So to get the bass control knob to fit into our switch blank, we need to do a little bit of disassembly. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pop the dial off of the actual bass control knob. We're going to use a 10 millimeter, you can either use your socket from earlier or a wrench, and we're just going to loosen that retaining nut. We're going to go ahead and spin it off. We're going to save that. And now what we need to do is we actually need to separate the back of the bass control knob from the little housing. So we're going to pop the rear cover off, and then that allows us to get our actual bass control knob out of the housing. So we're going to place our bass control knob into the switch blank. You'll see that there's a depression here that's going to make a little bit of extra clearance for the front of the circuit board there. Get that lined up. And take the retaining nut, and we'll go ahead and start that back on. Start it with our fingers, and then just very gently, we're just going to snug it up. All right. Now, want to decide which way is up, and then we're going to turn the knob all the way to the left. That is the low setting, because on the knob itself is an indicator arrow, so we want to orient that to the actual low side. I'm going to push our knob back on, that way you actually have a low and a high indicator that corresponds with the dial setting. So now that we have this loaded in there, now we can remove our panel. I'll show you how to pop the plug out, and then all you're going to do is run your wire and connect to the back of your bass control knob. All right, so this is the panel that we are going to get access to. We're going to go ahead and put the bass control knob right here in this vehicle. So the easiest way to do that is down here, right where the customer has his pedal commander installed. We're going to get our panel tool, and we're going to pop that loose. That will free up this upper panel. It's just held in with some push clips. Go ahead, and for the time being, we're going to unplug our panel. Now on our harness, you'll see it says bass control. We're going to run this behind the dash. And then we have our panel. We're going to flip it over, and then we're just going to depress the tabs and push our button blank out. You can save that. We take our base control knob. We had it set to low, so that's going to go to the left, and we're just going to work that into the panel until that is fully seated. We're going to move our base remote down to the lower position, and then all we need to do is plug it into the back of our base control. We're going to plug back in our start stop button, pull the extra slack, and then we can put our upper panel back in place, and then lock in the bottom. And now we have base control right here at our fingertips. Now we can start making connections to our head unit. All right, so in this actual part of the install, I'm going to show you the connections for the 2020 to 2024 with a factory head unit. If you have either a 2010 to 2019 with factory or aftermarket head unit, or a 20 to 24 4Runner with an aftermarket head unit, skip ahead right here. We're going to have chapter markers for small segments that cover each of the connections to each of those different setups. All right, continuing on this with our 2020 to 2024 with a factory head unit. I'm going to set a microfiber towel over the shift column here just so that it will protect the head unit a little bit as we make our connections. So first thing we're going to do with our amplifier harness is here is the black connector. That is the factory connector coming from the dash. That's what we want to connect to the female connector from our T-harness. That is the return of the signal coming back from the amplifier through our AudX harness and then going out to the factory speaker wiring for the dash, door, rear door, and hatch speakers. We're going to use our AudX AM/FM remote wire and T-harness. So we're going to find our AM/FM connector from our truck. That's going to be the male connector, is going to go to the female end from our harness. So that gives us our remote. We also have our ground wire. We've already attached the other end of this to our amplifier, so we're going to also ground it out on the side of the head unit. All right, so all we're going to do is we're going to pick one of these screw locations here. This is going to attach the metal bracket to the radio. We're just going to remove one of these. We're going to grab our ground wire extension with the ring terminal on it, and then we're going to reinstall the screw. I'm going to orient it towards the back of the radio. All right, that is firmly attached there. So now we have our ground, we got a remote wire. All right, now all we need to do is we need to start making connections back to the head unit. I'm going to start with the male plug from our AudX harness. That's going to go directly into the back of our factory radio. Again, this is the signal going out and going down to our amplifier. Also have our remote wire on our AM/FM adapter. We're going to go ahead and plug that in over here. And then the rest of it's just matching vehicle connector for vehicle connector. Going to go ahead and connect our white, that is our factory navigation antenna. We're going to connect the black, that is our factory Sirius XM. Connect our gray, that's our factory USB. And then we can go ahead and connect our main vehicle connectors. last one here is the skinny black one. That is going to be into our navigation module. All right, and our blue connector there. So just a quick double check of the back of the radio. Everything is filled, so that means all of our connections are made. So at this point, we want to make sure that we also connect our hazard switch. This segment is going to be applicable if you are installing this kit in a 2010 to 2019 Toyota 4Runner with a factory head unit. So here on the table, I actually have the factory head unit out of my 4th gen, but the plugs are still the same for all the way up to 2019. So as for demonstration, I have that, and then this is the harness setup that you will receive, again, for 2010 to 2019. You will already have the T-harness connected. Your remote wire, that's the blue wire with the white stripe, will be connected from your T-harness to your main harness. And then you have the ground wire. The other end of this will run down to the amplifier. We've also included an extension here with a bullet connector and a ring terminal on it. So what we're gonna look for on the back of our factory head unit is we're looking for a 6 and a 10-pin connector. So on this radio, you can see that they are right here. You will have the male end of the connector coming out of the dash of your vehicle. So what we're gonna wanna do is the male ends coming out of the vehicle will connect into the female ends of our T-harness. You then have the corresponding male harnesses that we are going to connect back into the radio. So the 6-pin will line up, the 10-pin will snap into place there. So essentially what we're doing here is we have audio signal coming out of the head unit, running down to the amplifier. It's then gonna travel back up the harness, go through the other side of the T-harness into the connectors coming out of the dash of your vehicle. That will send the signal out to the dash door and rear hatch speakers. And then the last wire to connect is the ground wire. This is optional, one way to connect it, but you absolutely don't have to do this if you don't want to. But on the side of the factory head units, even in the 5th gen 4Runner, you have some of these metal screws that hold in the metal bracket. All you need to do is just pick one. We're just gonna take one of the screws out of the bracket, put it through your ring terminal, and then reattach it. Again, you will have, a sub bracket here that this will also attach to. So you have a good metal to metal to metal contact between the head unit and the amplifier. So that's all of the connections. Again, this is 2010 to 2019 with a factory head unit. In this segment, we're going to cover how to connect your main harness to your aftermarket head unit in your 2010 to 2019 Toyota 4Runner. For demonstration purposes, we're going to use one of our Alpine ILX 507 plug-and-play bundles. So as we turn it around here, you can see we have all of our harnessing and our main harness for our radio. When you receive your main harness for your amplifier kit, you'll notice that on one side, on the male side of the T-harness, that these 3 connectors aren't connected to anything. That is completely fine because in the aftermarket application, we're going to use the RCA to connect to the radio. Also coming off the male side, you'll have the blue wire with a white stripe that will already be connected from the T-harness to the main harness. That is our remote turn-on wire. That is the wire that is responsible for when the head unit turns on, it sends signal down the remote wire to the amplifier, letting it know that it also needs to be turned on. So that will be connected. And then on the other side of your harness, you will have 3 sets of these RCA connections. So you have a front, rear, and subwoofer pair. also have a black ground wire extension. This can be used, it's not required, but you can use it if you want to ground your harness somewhere behind the radio, and then the other side will ground to the amplifier, so that way that you can reduce any potential for noise or interference in the harness. Again, if you decide to install this, all we need to do is find a nice metal-to-metal contact for the ground. And then if you decide that you don't want to, it has bullet connectors. You can simply disconnect it and remove it from the harness. So as we look at the back of our aftermarket head unit, you'll see that we have our main vehicle connectors here on our Maestro harness. Again, what we're looking for is we're looking for the 6 and 10 pin connectors. Normally, these would just be connected into the male connectors coming out of the dash of your vehicle. So what you're gonna wanna do, if you already had this installed in your vehicle, you're gonna wanna remove the 6 and the 10 pin connectors. The connectors from the dash will plug into the female end of the T-harness. The corresponding male end of the T-harness will then plug into your aftermarket radio harness. Now you have a couple options. You can either leave the remote wire in the T-harness as it comes, or if you'd like, on our harnesses, we include the bullet connectors already pre-terminated. You can connect the blue wire with a white stripe from your amplifier harness to the blue wire with a white stripe from your radio harness. Next connections that we want to find are our RCA outputs from our head unit. So here on the Alpine, they're nicely labeled front, rear, and sub. Some other applications may be labeled differently. The RCAs may be directly in the back of the head unit. You should have some sort of labeling that says which ones are front, which ones are rear, and which ones are for your subwoofer. So all we're gonna do is, these are also labeled front, rear, and sub on our amplifier harness. We're gonna find front, and in this case, we're gonna go white to white and gray to red. We're gonna find our next pairs rear, which is the greens and the purples. We're gonna go green to white in this case, and purple to red. And the last is our subwoofer. We're gonna go red to red and orange to white. One quick note about aftermarket audio, kind of the standard is white, gray, green, and purple. White is going to be your front left channel. Gray is going to be your front right channel. Green is going to be your rear left channel, and purple is going to be your rear right channel. So if you get these mixed up later on when you test it and your fade and balance is not correct, it's most likely because the RCAs are sending signal to the zone that they're not supposed to. So just go back and double check your connections here at the radio. In this segment, we're going to be covering connecting our main harness to our aftermarket head unit in a 2020 to 2024 4Runner. We're going to be using one of our Alpine ILX 507 plug-and-play bundles as demonstration for this. Here we have our main harness. This is the way that you will receive it when you order it from us. So we're going to be using the RCA bundles here to connect to our radio. The other side of the harness will have the connection to return the signal back to the vehicle. So basically the signal will be coming out of the head unit through the RCAs down to the amplifier, and then will travel its way back up the harness. This end will get connected back to the factory wiring, and that will send out your new amplified signal to all of your dash, door, and rear hatch speakers. So on the back of our radio here, we have our main vehicle connectors on our Maestro harness. The two connectors that we are looking for, we have the one single black connector here, and then the white AM/FM antenna adapter. If you already have your aftermarket head unit installed with this similar setup, you're going to remove the factory plug, male end of the plug that comes out of the dash from the black connector here. We are no longer going to need that connector, as we are now going to use our harness. So now the connector from the dash, the male end, will connect into the female end of our T harness. We're then going to connect our RCAs. So you can see here that we have 3 sets Kind of the general rule in aftermarket audio is white, gray, green, and purple. So you'll see that our white and our gray here are labeled front. Our white is our front left. Our gray is our front right. Our rear set here is green and purple. Your green is your rear left and your purple is your rear right. And then we also have red and orange as our sub pair. So this is important knowledge to know that when later on in the installation, when you start testing your system and you want to check fade and balance, if you send the signal to the front left and it is coming out of the front right, you most likely have your white and your gray connector flip-flopped. So make sure that you plug those in accordingly. So here on our Alpine, these are also nicely labeled. We're going to find our front out pair, and we're going to, in this instance, we're going to connect white to white and gray to red. We're going to grab our rears, the greens and the purples. We're going to connect green to white and purple to red. And then our last set is our sub pair. We're going to connect red to red and orange to white. Now, this is an Alpine specific setup. If you have any Sony or any other aftermarket head unit that has RCA pre-outs, just look on the back of the head unit, find the notation of which is front, which is rear, which is sub, which is left, which is right, and then just connect your RCAs accordingly. Next connection that we have here is you have an option. You can use this AM/FM remote wire adapter. This will plug directly into the AM/FM adapter from your harness. So the male end will go into the female end of the harness, and then the factory plug coming out of the dash will be a male end that will plug into the female end here. If you have a harness that already has a remote wire on it, like our plug and play head unit bundles, we have the blue wire with a white stripe here labeled amp turn on. In our bundles, we already pre-terminate it with a bullet connector. You can connect the bullet connectors directly to each other, and that will also accomplish the same thing. All this wire is responsible for is letting the amplifier know that the truck and the head unit are powered on and that it also needs to be powered on. The last wire is our ground wire. We've given you an extension here. This is not absolutely required, but is generally recommended. All you will want to do is find a nice metal-to-metal contact surface to install your ring terminal. This will, again, ground out the main part of the harness from the radio all the way down to the amplifier to eliminate any potential noise interference or engine noise. Again, this isn't required, so if you don't want to install this, just disconnect the bullet connector and you can remove it from the harness. So we have our main harness and our RCAs and our remote wire, everything's connected. All right, so now what we can do is we can tuck all of our wires back in the dash. All right, there we are. So for right now, we're just gonna leave the radio just in the dash. The next thing that we need to do is jump back up under the engine and connect the power wire for our amplifier. Then we can turn the system on, give it a first check, make sure that everything's working, and then we can do some adjustments. After we're happy with everything, we'll put the entire truck back together. All right, back up under the hood. We're gonna move our power wire out of the way. And we wanna, I'm gonna use the nut here on top of the post. Use a 12 millimeter to take that off. Now, get a lot of questions, so important note here. Most of the times when you touch the ring terminal to the battery post itself, you will get a little bit of a spark. That is completely okay. It's not damaging anything. Now it has a complete circuit, so we can go ahead and put that on, and then we can tighten the nut back down. All right, that's nice and tight. Before we test our radio, we need to go ahead and put our cubby back in so that we have our factory USB so that we can plug our phone into it and fire up our wired CarPlay. So let's get the two connections here. I'm going to plug our factory USB back in. Make sure you get your connection for the HVAC up and out of the way. Also going to connect our outlet. Go ahead and push that back into place for right now. With our battery connected now, we have the truck started. We're going to go through a quick test of the fade and balance, make sure that we have all of our connections in and out of the amplifier correct, and then we will move down and do some initial tuning of the amplifier. So here on our head unit, we're going to play some music. I'm going to go into our sound menu, fade and balance. All right, I can hear that coming out of the front left, now out of the rear left, out of the rear right, and out of the front right. So everything is connected correctly. Now we're going to go over the settings and what they mean on the side of our Alpine amplifier. So moving from the left, my left to right here, the first one is the turn on type. You can see this has a couple of different settings, DC, remote, and then on the bottom of the switch it also says high, high, and low. We want this dip switch to be all the way to the right. We're going low level input, again that's the RCAs, and we're also using our remote wire, so again that switch should be all the way to the right. Again, we have our RCAs connected from earlier. On the other side we have input channel. This is, we're going to set this to 3-4. We want to use all the input channels on the RCAs for our front and rear. And then below that is our sub setting. So you can, it says you have 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 or sub. We are going to slide this dip switch all the way to the right again for subwoofer, because we do have our RCAs connected to sub and the output is connected to our sub wire, which we just connected to our actual subwoofer. Moving up top here, we have channel 1 and 2, and then we have gains and high pass filter for those channels. This again is going to be what controls your front left and front right gains, and then channel 3 and 4 has its own gain and high pass filter associated with it. Generally, we say to set these high pass filters at about 80. So right here you can see there's a little 80 indicated on the dial. Basically the purpose of a high pass filter is it is going to limit the frequency range that those speakers are going to receive. We do not want to send sub-bass frequencies to our tweeters, and we don't want to send tweeter frequencies to our subwoofer. We do not want to hear the words of the song coming out of the subwoofer. That means that we are not set up correctly. And then down here at the bottom is the gain, the low pass filter, and the bass EQ for our subwoofer. Again, gain is a measure of loudness. So that is going to be, when we adjust it, that's going to be how we get our volume up on that channel. Our, in this case, low pass filter on our subwoofer is filtering out the higher frequency ranges, like I just said, from getting to the subwoofer. And then our bass EQ is just kind of a bass boost. We don't generally recommend using the bass EQ. Should be able to get plenty enough power and sound out of your subwoofer without having to mess with the bass EQ. So right now, all of our dials are set all the way to the left or the minimum. Our general recommendation, and what we're going to do here in a moment, is we want to get the most amount of power out of our head unit. So we're going to turn the volume on our head unit up to about 75% of its maximum volume. And then I like to start with the front gain, then go to the rear gain, and then go to the subwoofer gain. And we're going to start making adjustments, listening to the vehicle, and get things where you generally like them volume-wise and how they sound. After you're happy with the settings on the amplifier, then you can move back to your head unit and make any final EQ curve adjustments, whether that's a preset EQ or doing time alignment or any sort of other EQ function in whatever head unit you have. So like I said, we're going to start minimal here and we're going to adjust after we've turned our head unit up. So I'm going to go ahead and briefly go through an initial tuning here. And then after we're satisfied with everything, we'll button up a few more things and then put the truck back together. Now that we've put an initial tune on our amplifier and we're ready to start tidying things up, next thing we need to do is grab these little end plates for our amplifier. Those are going to go on each end of the amplifier and cover up and give some protection to our connections. We're going to secure it with these little tiny Phillips head screws that are provided by Alpine. Now that we have the covers on our amplifier, let's go ahead and put our door sill and our kick plate back on. So let's grab those. Got our kick plate here. Gonna get that lined up, push it back into place, secure the back with our little button here. And now we want to put our door sill back on. Let's get it lined up. Knock it home. All right, now we can grab our passenger seat and swing it gently into place over a new amplifier. Now that we have our seat in place, we're going to tip it back. Don't forget to reconnect the wiring harness for your seat. Just push the connectors back on. Now that we have all three of our connectors connected back to our seat, we can go ahead and lower this down, and we're going to line up the alignment pins on the front seat. There we go. And grab our seat bolts, and we're going to get these started with our fingers. We're going to leave them a little bit loose for right now. We'll go ahead and start the other one. All right, we're now going to move to the back of the seat, and we're going to go ahead and get our bracket lined up and our rear seat bolts secured. All right, so we can push up on our seat a little bit. We're just going to double check, make sure our amplifier bracket is lined up, and we can drop that down. We'll get our bolts started again by hand. Grab our other bolt. Need to push things around to get it started. That's absolutely okay. All right, now that we have them threaded, we can go ahead and tighten them down with our socket. Take our plastic covers, slide them back into place. Now that we've replaced our plastic covers, we can move back to the front and tighten up our front seat bolts. Grab our plastic covers for the front of our seat. Slide these back into place. There we go. Now that we have our passenger seat installed, we can move to putting back our center console and finishing up this install. All right, now moving back to the center console, go ahead and we already had our cubby connected, so we can connect our phone. We're just gonna go ahead and push it back into place. That will snap right in. We're gonna grab our 2 Phillips head, also 10mm screws, and replace those. Next, we're going to grab our 4 10mm bolts that hold in the bottom of our radio and secure those. Next up, we want our plastic trim piece from the center console. So the tabs are going to go into the slots at the bottom of your cubby, and that will lock into place. We then can grab our cup holder assembly. Don't forget to reconnect anything that you disconnected to get this off in the disassembly portion. Line our cup holder up, and we're going to push it straight down. And here it locks into place nicely. We can go ahead and replace our shift knob. Next up is our HVAC control. We're going to make the one connection on the back, re-secure the wire keeper here, and line that up below the radio. And lock that in. Grab our side panels, lining up the bottom, push those back into place. And there we are. Truck is fully reassembled. If you need to make sure that everything under the hood is tidied up and out of the way of the engine, then you can close your hood and you can go out and enjoy your new system. All right, everybody, thanks for hanging out with me for another awesome audio upgrade for your 2010 to 2024 4Runner. If you have a non-amplified factory vehicle, this is going to be a game changer for you. A whole new level of loudness, a whole new level of clarity, and whether you want to do this all at one time with head unit, speakers, amps, subwoofers, and sound deadening, or you want to do it in pieces, we've got a bunch of plug-and-play options for whatever suits your need. It's all available in the shop at trailgridpro.com. And like always, have a blast out there.